Can we give Gary a welcome?
Hello. We happy band. So here I am at the graveyard slot, and Liza asked me to just very briefly talk about. Initially, it was what was going on with conditionality in the tax checks, and what I said to her is when we organised this, all I keep hearing about from people is about the platform legislation as well, which is, so let's talk a little bit about how we got here. November this year will be the second year that we're into the government tax checks and the conditionality. We did a great deal of work letting people know that it was coming. All of you operators that renewed your licence in the time have probably had to make the 5-question or 6-question declaration. And one of the problems that we had in the early days was drivers would say, well, I have to declare my existence in the 5 questions, if any of you have gone through this or seen it from any of the drivers. Basically asked you, how long have you had your licence? How do you earn your money? Who are you driving for? And so basically it was a very simple declaration, which would produce a number, a code, and that code would be put into your licence application in order to get it. So it wasn't their UTR, wasn't their tax reference number. It had to produce a very individual code that had to go in. So that's come and gone. And the only thing is we've still got another year of going on. So those people that are on a 3-year licence cycle still have drivers that maybe haven't heard of it and don't know about it, go to renew their licence and find themselves that they can't renew their licence until they go and get their government tax check number, which is not a problem. I'm hoping everybody's got in place some kind of information to allow the drivers to know. And we've sent out loads of things from our website. We've got videos and things that show drivers how to do it. So it's important to remember that we have another year of this to go. It's still an issue. Drivers still need to be informed and they still need to know. But the tax checks legislation, anybody that came in for the VAT seminar this afternoon, which was very, very well attended, unfortunately, what we can't do is give people specific answers, because what we wanted people to do was to become part of the process of informing the HMRC what we think needs to be done. But this leads very simply that the conditionality tax checks were one part of a line of the government's simplification of the tax system. And guess what? Do you think the simplification is to make your life simpler, or the simplification is there to make their access to you and your money simpler? I think you can guess which one it is. So with the last year of conditionality, we've suddenly been told that in January this year, here's the thing, hands up, has anybody not heard of the platform, the digital platform legislation? Is everybody aware of it? Am I not aware of it? Is it something that's come about? I've spoken about it briefly in the industry. And how this started was people were trading on eBay, Etsy, even Deliveroo, which is not quite as coming, but let's look at the platforms that introduce buyers to sellers. And so some people it was a side hustle, so some people it was a business, and the HMRC decided there must be lots of people online that are making money and not declaring it. So the European Union it started with brought out some very detailed legislation to ensure that the obligations of the large digital platforms meant that they had to share their data and they had to be compliant in their behaviour. So some of it was about behaving themselves, but of course some of it is about sharing data. This came in January this year, and it came in for what we call the gatekeepers. And I think this is something that I do want to speak about, because if any of you have read in the trade press, I've read a few articles that said every single private hire operator is going to be affected by this digital platform, and all your information is going to go there. So everybody's drivers are going to them saying, because it's not just the tax checks was about the driver's declaration. This is the mission critical driver's income and expenditure. I mean, basically, they can take whatever they want. Journeys, income, all of that has to be shared in a digital platform with the credit authority, which in the UK is the HMRC. So I can imagine from a driver's point of view, even though I'd probably say to drivers, why are you worried about this? Because you declare everything on your tax return anyway, don't you? If you're smart. I can see that for an operator, haven't you had enough to scare the drivers with the tax checks and the other stuff coming through? This is one more thing doing it. So I think it's important that we get a sense of proportion in this, and really this is all I want to. If you take away nothing more, this year, 24 to 25, is about the gatekeepers. So who are the gatekeepers? eBay, Etsy, massive digital-only platforms that spend their time introducing buyers to sellers. If you are a gatekeeper, you would already know it because you would already be dealing with the HMRC, and you would actually be putting the process in place to share that information. So there are a couple of gatekeeper side operators in the UK. Don't need to mention who they are, but they're app-based companies that introduce drivers to passengers that want to do them. We know from the recent Sefton and the TfL, now called the Free Now case in the UK, that there is an obligation for the passenger to be principal. So it recognises passenger principal travelling with driver. So relationship of buyer and sellers there. So there are some large entities that will be captured by this legislation. But as to how it will be defined as we move forward, we just don't know at this point. So the one thing I want everybody to be able to walk away with is that at the moment, unless the HMRC have actually contacted you, do nothing. What you will do is we will find, as time goes by, we will establish the definition of the next line of people that should be declaring themselves, which I personally is going to believe is going to be technology companies within the ground transport, passenger transport, like dispatch companies and like some of the other entities that exchange information. There obviously will be some of the larger operators that will be caught by it. And then for most small to medium enterprise style private hire operators, it may well be, don't quote me on this, but 3-4 years. And there are also certainly a large amount of operators who I expect myself and people like me that will be acting for that won't get caught by this legislation because they will be able to prove that they have a real world relationship with the client, that they just use the technology as a satisfaction agent for that relationship. And that will be where there's a very geographic hinterland, a company that only works within 5 miles of a fixed area, that people would know them from supermarket. You know, it's quite broad sort of the people that know them from supermarkets. Those sort of companies, there will be a case put forward to say these are not digital platforms. These are private hire companies that are using automation and digital software to be able to do that. The point about it is that the information, if you think about it from a driver's perspective, they've done the tax checks. If your drivers come to you and say, if this, I read in, I'm not going to mention the magazine, but one of the magazines said every operator is going to be caught, which I don't believe. If I'm going to be called for it, I'm going to go elsewhere. Okay, so where's your drivers going to go to if they don't want all their information to be handed over? Delivery, captured by it. Parcel, distribution of parcels. When the tax checks scared away unregistered drivers, they could go away and deliver parcels and food. We are now moving towards a cashless society where checks and balances come into every aspect of our digital interaction. So even though some people are outside of this current legislation, eventually we're going to get caught. maybe not us, maybe the people that take over from us when we retire or whatever. But we're going to be a cashless society eventually. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I just think there's an inevitability to it. But the whole point about this is it's not. I've heard a lot of people panicking. There's nothing to panic about at the moment, and there will be some people that aren't caught by it. What I would say, because it's been a long day, guys. The last one overran a little bit, so let's be gentle then, because we all deserve coffee. What I would say, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. I do have an online blog, so if you go to the easytax.co.uk website, or you go over to my stand, there's a QR code that gets you onto my blogs. You'll find that I've got a lot to say about a lot. So there's blogs on VAT, blogs on conditionality, blogs on the platform legislation. You're more than welcome to have a look or come and find me. And that's it really. It's just an awareness, because my phone was ringing off the hook for a while with people saying, oh, my driver's going to leave me. We're going to be caught by this legislation. And actually, it's never that simple. In the same way that VAT on fares is not that simple, the digital platform obligations not that simple. There is not a train running from the station that we've got to run to jump on. It's part of a greater process. Any questions? Hello.
Hello. So it's not a question. It's a reinforcement of what we've been saying. Sorry.
I think there is, and you may be around to this, is volume, the amount of information that's being used on these digital platforms. So if you have a smaller company that's collecting digital data, for a better word, they may not be meeting the threshold for the volume of data that they are processing and sharing. So if you are using an external company, a third-party provider, it's the third-party provider that will be captured by the Digital Platform Act rather than the individuals themselves. So it's good when you do your data sharing agreements to check with those providers to ensure that they know what the requirements are. So it could protect a lot of smaller businesses.
No, I absolutely agree. I think the whole point about this is that one of the reasons why I wanted to lead into it was that people are making blanket predictions, and we can't yet make a blanket prediction unless you're a gatekeeper that's already speaking to the HMRC about the exchange of data. And the chances are, in order to do this, you need staff, and you need technology, and you need funding, which will be out of the reach of some companies, and there is no way the government will go that far to get that data by doing that. So yeah, good point well made. Cool. Hello. I'm sorry. You should just stay in a circle, really, shouldn't you?
Gary, just an example of this, and it's been a bit of a nuisance. My wife used to work with us. She got made redundant. Said, so get a badge, come work with us. She's got a badge 3 years. She then got a new job, but she didn't work with us. But when she came for renewal on her badge, the conditionality checks came in. She wasn't working with us, and she's a higher rate taxpayer. She said to me, I don't want to do this because I don't want people looking at, what I'm doing. And I mean, what's the worst that can happen? What you're gonna, if you're gonna pick up somebody that's a higher rate taxpayer, but they're not actually anything out of a private hire, but they're badge.
If we're specifically talking about conditionality with the tax checks, there is a facility within the questions that you answered that are very clear. Is, do you make money from the movement of a human being from one door to another? So, and are you employed or self-employed? So there is the ability. Honestly, we can't stop the government collecting data from us. What I would say is, especially the tax checks, if the data is not, and probably you'll be able to answer that in this, I believe that if the data is not necessarily relevant to what they need the data for, which is about self-employed people and their ability to renew their badges, I think it's submitted as part of. Remember, you're not submitting data; you're submitting you're submitting a declaration. So I would fill it in, make the declaration. The chances of anything bouncing back, because it's outside of the mean average of data that they're looking to chase up on. So I've had a lot of people that wanted to renew their license, but weren't even driving anymore, weren't doing anything else. And there is the facility within for the application to do that.
Yeah, I think from my wife's point of view, she was paranoid that there might have been an accusation that she was going out doing cash work, And you know,
No, absolutely. And remember, they're not telling you to exchange that data. They're asking you to make a declaration. As an accountant, there's a reason why they make you declare it, as opposed, because otherwise they just would have asked you for your unique tax reference number. You would have submitted that. They would have known the tax pack. By making a declaration, that prepares you to be inspected, because it means that you can say something that can be questioned. However, the reality isn't there. They don't have the staff or the legacy systems to be able to do it. This is just a declaration. When the platform installation really hits, and there are dispatch companies giving critical data, then there will be an exchange of data where they can say, you earn this much from this date to this, doing this. And that's, we're just not going to escape it. But I think the reality is just a long way from that, because it is a declaration of condition as opposed to an exchange of critical data.
and just to finish as well, if she now applies for a badge as a new applicant, she doesn't need to fill it in.
No. The tax check is not needed for new people. It's about the applications. Cool, thank you. Anything else? Oh, hello.
Yeah, just going back to the platform where you said about this term gatekeeper. Is that actually written down anywhere? Is there anywhere that tells, say, me as an operator, that I don't have to do this yet?
So I unfortunately have read all the documentation on it, starting from the original European papers that were written by. You can tell, what was the name of the? Sorry, this is our data. What was the organisation? EODC. Yeah, loads of that as well. So they produced, it was like Government Quanga was the first. They produced the first one, and then the UK, when it came within the UK jurisdiction, I have read hundreds and hundreds of pages. What they've never put anywhere is when you look up the definition says digital platform. It's like using the same word to explain, saying meaning tool means tool. So the answer is no. The chances are, when you look at what their expectation is, which is you are a digital platform that introduces buyers to sellers, is the basis. I mean, there's thousands more pages of it, but that's the basis of it. The definition for people outside that doesn't exist. But the HMRC are very good at doing that, because it means that they can then, in the same way they make people on the tax checks make a declaration rather than tell them what to do so they can trip over themselves. It means that they can go, we think you're caught by it, or we don't. Which is why, the one thing that I've found myself saying a lot in this industry, is when in doubt, do now. Because when we talk about gatekeeping, we talk about huge entities. I would start. Oh, are you with the Cap 9?
No, we're an operator in use.
Okay, you just stole shirts. There is ways and means to test the waters, but you've got to be a little bit careful, because by testing the waters, you might find yourself the subject of them trying to model it. I mean, I've never run from the HMRC. I've never believed don't pack the tiger. I believe pack the tiger really hard and see what it does. In this particular instance, let's see how they deal with the technology users, the technology providers in our industry, and I will probably have a better grip on how they will then look at the operators. But this isn't the last you've heard from me on this, or our data specialists. We're just starting.
I would say gatekeepers are the big tech companies that allow you to use their platforms. So Etsy being one, Facebook being another one. I know it's a different concept.
Yeah,
they are the creators of
kind of
this.
get that, but I've read through the legislation. I can't see anywhere where it says that it only affects big people to start with. Where has this come from? Who's decided?
So this is the beauty of dealing with HMRC. Gatekeeper is the terminology they use. gatekeeper says a gatekeeper is I think I'm going to get this description wrong, but the gatekeeper basically says if you are a gatekeeper, you'll know who you are. So, which means it's going to be a substantial multinational platform. Beyond that description, the definition, they've got to do it first. And then, like most, we live in a country with an unwritten constitution. If any of you know or used our services, you know that I get involved in conflict and this kind of stuff, and bits and pieces. Sometimes someone's got to fight the first battle before you get a legal precedent. So even the word gatekeeper is we know that it is a large enough entity to be multinational and non-jurisdictional, so wide that it covers multiple jurisdictions. From then on down, each one will define the next. But yeah, well done for reading it.
Well, there's some pretty big fines if you fail to comply, aren't there?
Oh, I'm not saying that we should absolutely embrace, and this is why we talk about it, it's just when and how. Go on, sorry, you're about to make a...
It says digital platforms include apps and websites that facilitate the provision of goods and services, such as the provision of taxi and private hire services.
Such as?
Yeah.
It's not saying a hack's the thing that comes to your head. You've got to understand that. We all know who they're talking about. It doesn't mean to say that every private hire company is caught by it. It's given it as an example.
It just says including the individual companies will say right.
No, it will eventually, it will filter down, but as yet, the terminology of what a digital platform is currently undefined in law, because somebody has to win a case or lose a case for precedent to be created for that definition. I've got to tell you, we have got to be so careful in this industry. I've been accountant service in this industry for 30 years. Every time the government makes an announcement or there's a piece of legislation, someone always comes out and says, this is what it means. You won't find a professional, white-collar accountant or solicitor, that will tell you this is what it means until it's been defined. The problem that I often have is, although your opinion is valid, your opinion isn't legal. It's only legal when you test it. So you have to be really careful. And all that means is, I do it out of love. Why fight a battle until you actually need to? And if somebody else is going to fight the battle for you, benefit from their willingness. No, you're more than welcome. Okay, cool. I'm going to finish my coffee now. I've been a little boiled down. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for great questions.
Can I get another?
I mean, so I could be asked to stand up.